Greetings everyone, welcome to a snowy New York City on a cold February day. It's been snowing here all day. When it snows here all day, it's very, very quiet outside. I'm doing another one of my famous 5x5 record challenges. 5, 5, 5. The only difference is I just made this entire thing and it didn't record. So I'm going to use the same records I spoke about then. Same difference. Some I know a lot about, some I don't know anything about. We're going to start with this great album that I pulled out of the rack, Sonny Rollins on Impulse. If you don't have any Sonny Rollins records, you might as well start with this one. This is an incredible friggin' record. Sonny Rollins on Impulse, play on words, because he actually is, it sounds very impulsive. This is a stereo copy I bought from Jazz Record Center. Beautiful laminated cover. Here we see on the inside, Sonny Rollins walking up, coming out of his cool, looks like a Carmen Gia, right? Here he is at Englewood Cliffs. Here he is at Rudy Van Gelder's Englewood Cliffs. Rudy's welcoming him in. And if you go to Englewood Cliffs, it still looks exactly like that. Here we have the lineup. Walter Booker on bass, Mickey Roker on drums, Ray Bryant on piano. That's a really odd lineup to be playing with Sonny Rollins. I kind of think Sonny Rollins didn't really care who he was playing with. I think he let the producers pick who he was going to play with, because this is just such an odd assortment. Mickey Roker never played, to my knowledge, with Sonny again. And if you go from different Sonny Rollins records, if you go from The Bridge with Jim Hall to Blue Note 1542 with Max Roach to the record he did with Coleman Hawkins with Roy McCurdy on drums and Bill Evans on piano, I think, he always has unusual lineup, because I don't think he really didn't care. He knew all the guys in New York, late 50s, mid 60s were incredible players. And this is one of his great records, along with, like I said, The Bridge, Alfie, Blue Note 1542, meets Coleman Hawkins. He made so many great records into the early 1970s. After that, I'm sorry, just started to get kind of boring. I don't know what happened. Those records just sit in the store and don't sell. But this record is amazing. He does On Green Dolphin Street, Everything Happens to Me, Hold 'em Joe, Blue Room, Three Little Words. And you really do get the feeling he just walked in the studio, counted it off, and boom, they take off. Because there's so much music flowing out of him, and he has so much power and so many ideas, and they're so melodic and so logical. You know, I interviewed Ron Carter a few years ago, and he said, I'm not a bass player, I'm a scientist. Well, I think Sonny Rollins is the real scientist of jazz, and the way he plays solos, there's kind of a scattershot thing to it, and there's so much freedom, but he'll come up with these lines that don't seem connected, but it's almost like there's layers of different solos within a solo when he plays a solo. It almost sounds like he's, you know, like he's mastered all these theorems and equations. And on top of that, he's so soulful and inventive, and he swings so hard. Just still one of the most amazing players in jazz. So I can't recommend this highly enough. Then I got off on a Jack DeJohnette tip, as you'll see to the other. I pulled out an ECM record with Jack on it. This is Jack DeJohnette's debut album, the DeJohnette Complex. I don't know what year this is. Early 70s. Great lineup. Stanley Cowell, Roy Haynes playing drums on one track when Jack plays melodica, Eddie Gomez, Miroslav Vitos. And this is just a really fun record. Jack full of abandon. Jack, I think, is probably the greatest living jazz drummer right now. You know, he has a direct connection to Roy Haynes and Miles, obviously, he played with. If you can find this record is just a blast. You know, Jack always has kind of odd things on his records as you don't expect, but that's because he's such an artist and he's such an original thinker. But if you can find this record on Milestone, I don't think it's been reissued, probably on CD but not on vinyl. It's a great record. But this came out of this record, Werner, Pirchner, Harry Pepl, and Jack DeJohnette, 1982, on ECM. As I was saying before I destroyed the whole thing, I'll buy anything with Jack DeJohnette within reason. If it's an unusual lineup I've never seen before, I'll just buy it, because he's such a great drummer on so many great records. He makes so many records great. You know, he's like he's another master like Sonny Rollins. He has full command of his instrument. He can play in any style of jazz, any time frame, any feel, any dynamic level, and he's so powerful, and he never runs out of ideas. You know, DeJohnette and Sonny Rollins, those cats just never run out of ideas. Your Jack McLean's Demon's Dance on Blue Note. This record's hard to find as vinyl. This is one that hasn't been reissued in any of the Tone Poet or Classic Vinyl or BN80 or whatever they're calling it now series. This is a hard record to find. This is a Liberty copy that I have. but this is really great to hear. It's an unusual record for Jackie McLean because it comes at the end, I think, of all his other great Blue Note records. I think this is more around the time of New Old Gospel, but it's after It's Time and Swing Sang Swingin' and Bluesnik and all those great records he did one after another. This, I think, is early 70s. It's because this is when Transamerica owns Blue Note. But what a lineup. I mean, gee whiz, Woody Shaw, Jackie McLean, Lamont Johnson, Scott Holt, and Jack DeJohnette. For Jack DeJohnette, this is an amazing record. It's an amazing record for Jackie McLean. Roger Kellaway, I think of him as a West Coast guy, effervescent, bubbly player, sort of light, sort of like the precursor to my way of thinking of what you might hear in soundtracks of the 70s, written by Anthony Newley and Leslie Percuse, or Burt Bacharach. To me, he comes out of that whole lyrical sort of pop sensibility of playing jazz trio. He has a lot of his own tunes on here. The record includes Jim Hall on a label called Regina, which also included a Charlie Mariano record, Jack LaForge, Dorothy Donegan, Sylvia DeSales, sort of, lesser known players. But and I think he also, I could be wrong, but I think Roger Kellaway plays on Sonny Rollins' Alfie. But it's that era of all these wonderful musicians, and we have tons of wonderful musicians now. I had Valentine's Day dinner with my girlfriend the other day, and we went to Arturo's, which is a classic red sauce pizza joint down on Houston Street. It's been here in the village for probably since the late 50s. You go for the ambiance, and there was this killer piano player in there, and he's playing all this stuff, and he had a mask on, like everybody else did, and I'm like, who is this guy? I requested he play some Joe Beam or something, which he didn't, but he was just burning. And then a friend of mine was there, a drummer, and we went up afterward and spoke to this guy. It was Art Herrera, who I thought was from the West Coast, who was just one of these not really well-known contemporary players, but he's a great player. I don't think he's on the Summit record label. He might be on Positone. We have so many great musicians now, but most of them don't record on vinyl. But that's a guy. If you want to hear something contemporary, is really great. Piano player Art Herrera. And then finally, I pulled out Freddie Roach, Mo Green's Please, and it kind of reminded me. You have all these grits and gravy style records on Blue Note, or on Riverside. There's that famous cover of Wes Montgomery and Jimmy Smith, where they're both holding the sandwich from either side and taking a bite. You got Lou Donaldson, Gravy Train. There's just so many albums that have this theme of eating. It's kind of like rubbing your belly kind of music. And there are many different organ players, and even within their own output, they're all kind of hit and miss. I love Shirley Scott, but all of her records aren't great. Larry Young may be the only Hammond B3 organ player who we really see evolve into something incredible. Larry Young Unity is probably the hippest, greatest organ trio album ever recorded on Blue Note. Everyone else is a little more in the more laid back, let's just work on this groove tradition. And this is one of those records with Conrad Lester, Kenny Burrell, Eddie Wright, and Clarence Johnson. This is a Japanese pressing. I don't really remember because I haven't played in a while, but I try not to keep, I don't have a lot of room, as you can see, so I only keep records that I really like. And for Freddie Roach, this is cool. There's another one called Oh Baby that has this really pretty woman's face on the cover. And there's another one where he has a whole lineup of women. And that one's just okay, it might have voices, but this is one of his better records. Anyway, that's today's 5x5 challenge. Please join me at Jazz Vinyl Lovers and see me lose my mind. Bye-bye.